beat.
Bing, boom, bing.
Why do a clap like that?
Ant, what's happening?
Yo,
You
can
can
you hear
hear
me?
us?
And what the fuck is going on?
I don't know what's happening.
I haven't seen you in so long, fam.
You still not seeing me though. That's the funny thing.
I feel like I only
Damn.
see you. I only see you online. Like you have this new profile pic. You look like a professor for real.
The
You look
person,
like
the myth, the legend.
just an academic.
I just be sleeping, y'all. That's really what I try to do.
So
I just be
happy,
sleeping.
so grateful for you to make some time for us in your busy schedule.
Wow, that felt like an attack.
Ask this nigga when can we link? Well, give you those random ass times. Hey, you know we really fuck with you. We really love you because it's 7:30 on a Friday in the Bay Area. The
In
fucking
Oakland.
Warriors are playing this first Friday, and we sit in this nigga Blake apartment.
Damn, that really is love, honestly. Like, damn, thank you. I love that too.
How you doing, fam?
Um, I'm good. I'm good. I took a little nap before this, so I was supposed to be going to dinner and doing some of that, but that didn't happen. And so I was like, I'm gonna take my ass a nap, which felt good.
Is this a busy time for you right now? I'm assuming so.
Yeah, so we're in week 10 of a 10-week quarter system. So next week is finals. So I have a paper I have to write myself. And then
Great.
that Friday of finals week is when my students have their finals due. So then I have to turn those grades around in a week.
And you have to do that all by yourself?
No, it's me, the professor, and another TA.
Okay.
But it is a lot of work. There's about 150 students in that class. And of that, I'll have to grade about a third, so about 50.
Grading be hella fucking taxing too. That shit's like emotional labor,
Yo,
bro.
Blake, fuck grading.
I
It's
hate that shit.
horrible.
I cannot relate. I taught PE. Everyone gets an A. Everyone gets an A. You tried today? Come on. Everyone gets an A.
I'm trying to give people A's, and then they don't be reading, and then they like write non-truths, and then
Fair.
I'm like, I can't give you an A.
I cannot support this.
It's sad.
I really do everything in my power to get people A's, and they fuck it up. I'll be hella mad. I'm like, really? Like, you really have to try not to get an A. I'm really trying my best. Like, I'm reaching out to you because you forgot to turn the paper in. Like, still give me attitude, though.
If I had professors like y'all, I would have had a 4.0 in college. Where motherfuckers are actively working to ensure that I, succeed, not only succeed, but excel in the class.
Trying, we really do try. We really do try.
Niggas be ungrateful for real, man.
How are y'all on this Friday evening?
Shit. Doing all right, you feel me? Got some Hennessy in front of me, so I'm doing a little bit better now. But nah, everything's all right.
Hey, fam, I'm just, I'm breathing, giving it the best that I got. Is that Anita? Who sing that song?
I think it's Anita Baker,
Anita
but
Baker?
don't.
Yeah, I'm giving it the best that I got.
That's all we can do. That's all we can do.
That's
right?
all niggas can really do, for real.
Mm-mm-mm.
All right.
Okay, well, are y'all doing something after this? Like after we record?
I don't know. I figure me and him haven't had dinner yet. We'll probably go eat or something.
We'll see where the wind takes us.
We got that live pod on Sunday, so I think niggas are just trying to stay low key and out of trouble and safe to
Yep.
make sure we make it to that.
But after that, I'm
I
acting a
appreciate
fool.
that. I just want to take a moment for Blake to see where the wind takes us. I can't. But I
That's how I've been
understand.
feeling,
I
fam.
understand. That's real.
Shit. All right. Shit. So we'll do like a little drop or some shit, and then yeah, we'll introduce you, and then you could like talk about yourself and stuff like that. We just want to make it we sent you the outline, but just like a conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what sounds the best. But we definitely trying to pass you the mic and whatnot. So
Absolutely. I love it. If you like it, I love it. So,
cool. All right. Is that your dog in the background?
Yeah, how much can you hear her?
Fucking Apple.
I heard her just rocking. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Who
all
gives
good.
a fuck? People don't come to Hella Black for top quality
Yeah.
audio. Nigga, they come for real shit, nigga. Period. Nigga, if you don't like it, you could dip.
All
It's
right.
an apple, period.
People love dogs
So,
anyway.
Yeah.
Shit. Dogs got more rights than us.
Very
All right.
true.
Well, that is actually very true. We might have to name this episode Ant and Apple.
Hashtag all lives matter. All dogs
Hashtag
matter.
animal lives matter. Hashtag is a pitbull lives matter. All right.
B, you gonna give us our drop?
Shit, I guess so.
Let's rock.
It's hella black, baby. You feel me? We all the way tapped in, locked in, rocking that pure black shit. You feel me? Pure black. That organic black. You feel me? That non-sellout black. That revolutionary black.
That
you feel me?
non-GMO black, nigga.
That, you feel me? Whole Foods organic black. Nah, fuck Whole Foods. Fuck all that capitalist shit, but, fruit was good. Organic fruit, organic mangoes. I had a really great organic mango.
Hella black episode. Is this 44?
Yeah.
Oh, this
44.
is really black history because wasn't Obama our 44th president? Nigga, let's go. Nigga, this is black history. Hella black episode 44.
It's 44, but I don't even know when we finna drop this because we got the live podcast. We'll probably drop this after the live podcast.
Wow.
So it might be 45. Fuck Trump, but fuck Obama.
Wow.
Fuck all them.
You're gonna do me like
fuck
that.
all them presidents.
Wow.
It's only right.
Yeah, we heard you voted for him.
What? Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Who? I'm sorry. Who?
Shit, we just fucking
Who?
I don't know if y'all recognize the voice or not. We have a very, very, very special guest on today's episode
of Hella Black Podcast.
One of my favorite people in the world, Anthoknees.
And this is real because we've been trying to get Ant on for forever. But we've known Ant for like hella long too. Organized the whole 9 yards. You feel me?
Yeah.
So it's real. It's a good moment right now. And
I feel like we've had Ant and Khadijah, hella black hit in tomorrow, and I'll be all right. Like we've had two very important people in terms, at least for me, when I think about like shaping my politics, we've had two of the most important people who have helped shape and mold me on the podcast, and I can die tomorrow knowing that hella black no longer exists with Delancey on it, but we got
you gonna live tomorrow
Ant and Khadijah on there, so I'm juiced.
Ant, what's happening?
Y'all are too kind. It's funny because we've been trying to get me on, and so I'm like, at one point I was like, these niggas don't really want me on. I was like, because it's not happening.
Don't be disrespectful, fam. Don't say nothing. Shit.
No, I know, but I knew the thing is, as we were talking about prior to recording, like, is my schedule. Like, the life of a PhD student is like, there's a lot of flexibility, but it's also just like ridiculous. Like, it doesn't even make sense. And then I do too much, and so I add to it. So I take the responsibility for the scheduling. I do.
Yeah, me and Delancey was about to really just buy some Southwest and pull up on you and find you, just walk around UCLA campus. Like, have you seen Anthoknees? Like,
yeah, and they know I be in LA frequent. I feel like when we talk, I tell them like, oh, I'm in LA, we should link up. But it's not just it's not just Ant's schedule that has made things difficult. It's all three of us just having so much fucking shit going on.
Yeah, I think people think
well, I mean,
like
y'all
really
getting profiled by Playboy and shit. I was like,
Relax.
it was something.
I know these people. Oh my. I got very excited. It was dope. That was a really good feature, especially because Taylor did it, and she did it right. So it was beautiful.
Yeah, appreciate that, fam. We just trying. Trying to make it shake, make it come together like butt cheeks.
Well, I guess that's one way to do it.
But nah, we're super happy to have you on the pod. It's like we've all said, it's been a long time coming, so we can finally check this off the hella black bucket list. We got Ant.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here in this moment like, where do we go from this? Oh yeah, we have an episode to do. But you feel me? We're very excited. Very happy to have you, So do you want to just tell us a little bit more about what you do? I know you're an organizer. You done some organizing work, activism, scholar. Shit, we did research together and shit. You feel me? You used to edit some of my writing and shit. Like, we really
talents. I'm telling you, they've edited some of my writing.
Twitter.
I'm telling you, come on.
You feel me? Just you be in the tweets, in the streets, in the books. You feel me?
I do a lot. I've done a lot. And sometimes I think about it when I'm teaching. Like, my students, I think about how I thought about my TAs, and how I didn't really think about their interior life and what they be doing and what they be thinking. And I think about how much I've done that my students probably just some care about, but a lot don't give a fuck about, which is okay, right? Because like you often you're here at UCLA or UC Berkeley or whatever to get your degree and dip. Um, but sometimes I'm like, I can help you actually. Like if you come to my office hours, because students don't want to come, right? If you come to my office hours, I can actually talk to you about some stuff. But on that note, so currently I'm a PhD student. I'm in my second year at UCLA in the sociology PhD program, which is a mess, but I'm here and I'm glad that I'm here. Like, I'm glad that I chose the program I chose. I'm glad that I chose grad school, but every day I also wonder why I chose it. And we can get into that. But I also write, I write a lot. It's actually slowed down in grad school just because I've been so busy doing all this. I live in Los Angeles and I don't like it. It is not for me. It's a cute place to visit, but I don't love living here. I was organizing in Oakland. I haven't been here in LA, which has been like a very weird experience. It feels like I'm very disconnected from the community. And a lot of the times I was like, how do I even get connected? Like, I have black folks on campus, but that means like all my black folks are almost all PhD students, right? Or undergrads here. And so like, how do you get off the campus? And it's not like I could just show up in like, you know what I mean? Like South LA, Southgate and be like, what's up? Like, like it doesn't work like that. In the same way that I think it can work in Oakland sometimes and in the Bay. Um, yeah, I do hella shit. I used to act. I used to direct, specifically for the stage. Although I did film and some like online TV too. But it's different now. I write. I'm a dog parent to Apple,
Yeah,
8 year old
we heard
pit
Apple's
bull,
footsteps earlier.
pit bull terrier with a lot of spunk. You might hear her because she does the most. She likes to grunt. Usually those are happy grunts, but that's me. I try to sleep sometimes because that doesn't always happen. That's me. That's who I is.
Yeah, I've found it difficult when you have people such as yourself, like trying to, I guess, describe and introduce them. I don't know what I feel like when I was thinking about, okay, how could we fucking? I think in the outline that I sent you, I'm like, okay, writer, PhD candidate, organizer. Like, I don't want to. I don't even know what else to put because I know that they do so much other stuff. But I think you just did a really good job of introducing yourself better than I could have did on some for real shit.
Yeah, you should for sure
Thank
transcribe that. You feel me? And save that and put it in your bio.
That's a bio instantly. I'm telling you, I fuck with
Oh,
that.
I also mentor. I mentor undergraduate students, and I also I teach as a graduate student instructor. So those are two, and I'll be tweeting. I tweet too much. So those are three things I forgot.
I'm like, B, don't you hate when people ask you to like introduce yourself, or don't you find like
I
not
feel
necessarily
hella
hate, but
awkward.
yeah, I'm like, I don't
Just
want to
like, I
reduce
don't want
myself to something, and I don't want to oversell myself.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm gonna just be like, I'm that nigga. And just leave it at that. Oh, you don't know who I am? Blake don't crack, motherfucker, nah.
This nigga's nuts. Get your man's.
You see the wind is blowing today. That's for sure. But
That's fine. If Blake's that nigga, then I'm y'all don't read. If we have to be a tagline, it's hard to argue with y'all don't read. And I'll be that. I will embody that.
Facts. So, yeah, me and B had a conversation. Like a couple of days ago, we were trying to figure out for Pride Month. I guess like what was going. I was kind of somebody had asked me like what are Blake and I's plans for like Pride Month? Like how do we plan on like showing solidarity, which I think we actively try to do all the time, right? Not just
it's an everyday thing.
yeah, right. But I think with this shining light on Pride, we were trying to figure out what is something that we can do to like show our solidarity and show our support. And we were thinking like all the time we definitely want to use this month to like amplify queer voices, and that's we're hoping we're not hoping, but we're going to have more guests on, more folks that identify as queer on the podcast this month. And I think this is kind of like a dope situation for our first time have you on the podcast. Is also us like trying to, like I said, be better allies and like amplify queer voices during Pride Month. So
Yeah,
that's what we're hoping to do with this month.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me because I mean we've all had conversations about this a lot because when we were organizing and writing together and editing and all of that, those are conversations that were not happening within the organization we were in,
Hmm.
and that was or were happening, but then we're silencing to queer and or trans folks and women, and it's wild because there's the idea that when you're depending on who you are, right? It's like this black first idea, right? Like
Hmm.
you're black first and then your queerness or your transness, or in my case, my non-binary identity comes second, right? And then you're in queer spaces, and then it's like they're not necessarily demanding that you're queer first, but that's the expectation, right? And then they're mad anti-black, and so it's like, where the fuck do you go where you can actually be like, what I mean, like black and queer? Like that was a piece I wrote a few years ago. Actually, it was like, where do we get to be black and queer? Because it's just some fuck shit. Like literally, that's my life all the time. Because what ends up happening is you have cishet friends, right? Like, and then ultimately they disappoint you, right? And it's like, this is not cool, right? And how do you live a life where you're embracing like black community all the time, right? Like I work with incarcerated youth and they be saying some homophobic ass shit, so how do I like call them on it without blaming them for the systems that taught them to be homophobic, right, or transphobic or misogynistic? So it's like always like a process of figuring that out. So I'm glad like y'all have been like really transparent in terms of like your politics and in terms of Pride Month and in terms of like how you've grown, I think, which is super important because it's hard for people to see. And I even just remember, this is sidebar, but I remember the other day Delancey tweeted about having like going to his first therapy session. And like there's like a way in which like that tweet, whether somebody liked it or retweeted it, like has a lot of meaning, and a lot more than a tweet for black men, especially cishet black men, to then see that this man that they respect, and sometimes, know or don't know, like went to therapy, so like shit like that matters. And I appreciate y'all doing what you do.
Thank you for teaching us, for real.
Yeah, like I was when you were talking about like working with the incarcerated youth, and I guess like having to find that I don't know if balance is what I'm looking for, but it sounds like like having to like I guess like falling victim to their like super homophobic ways, which they're kids for one, and they're like products of the system, products of society. So like trying to help them through that and having to deal with that, deal with those emotions. That sounds like hella fucking labor. Um, and I can only imagine what that shit is like. I mean, me and Blake were having a conversation about that earlier when I was talking about like trying to hold my cousins and friends accountable and like not trying to, I guess like I don't want to victimize them, but I also don't want to blame them. I guess because it's like they're really just products of fucking their environment. But that shit is tiresome as hell.
Yeah, that's the way to. I mean, honestly, that's the way to phrase it. It's tiresome as hell because, like, if your goal is to really love Black people, right, and if that's a praxis, right, like that's really what you be doing on the daily, rather than just like something you say or a T-shirt you wear or like some bullshit like that, like which is a journey like a lot of us are going through. If that's your goal, is like to love and to uplift black people, then it's like, how do you do that and also recognize the humanity? And like I haven't quite figured it out in terms of like individual cases, because even with the young men inside, like I've worked with some men who are like more open to being like um kind of guided or like mentored in those ways, but like there's a way that hypermasculinity and incarceration go together, right? And a lot of that hypermasculinity that we get taught then also leads to acts that get people incarcerated, right? By this like fucked up ass system. So it's rough because with these boys, like with my last set, we talked about these things more openly. With this set, it's been like a very slow process. So we'll ask them questions, right? Because if you just straight up say like that's homophobic, they're like nigga, and you know what I mean? Like, and so it's not as simple as like, oh, I'm gonna cancel this person. It's like, nah, like that's somebody who the system has already canceled. Some of their family members have already canceled. You know what I mean? Like in a real way, not like, oh, I'm canceling this person in my head. Like they've really
Yeah.
not supported them. So it's the shit's hard and the shit is tiring, and tiresome, like you said.
So in some ways, you kind of have to like work against cancel culture. Is that what you're kind of talking about in a little ways?
A little bit, yeah, yeah. And the thing about cancel culture, is like you see it online, but cancel culture, it usually doesn't work. So like I do think the conversations on cancel culture are interesting because people have been talking about canceling R. Kelly for years, right? For literally over a decade, and people, you know what I mean. And when I say people, I mean Black people still play R. Kelly in "Step in the Name of Love," right? Even after the whole documentary, and even after all the news we've heard, you know. So like this cancel culture is like he's still be getting streams, you know what I mean? Like he still makes his money, and so there's a way in which we talk about cancel culture, and it can be mad toxic. Of like, oh, this person, you know, like they find out that Delancey said "fag" 10 years ago, and all of a sudden Delancey's canceled. Like that in a smaller social circle, that could matter, right? Like that could really matter because you can really cancel somebody and be like, Delancey is a toxic ass cishet man, da, 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 right? And this is I'm making this up, just to be clear, but like you could do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a way that that has a material impact with like celebrities and with other people. That's when I see like it doesn't actually usually happen. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But I think you can't, if we apply that celebrity cancel mindset to people in our lives, to Black people, it's like then y'all wouldn't be doing like People's Breakfast, right?
Yeah, I
Because
feel like that's
you
hella
could be
detrimental.
exactly, it's hella detrimental because then you're like judging somebody because they're houseless and you're giving them food or you're giving them money and you don't know what they're going to do with the money, quote unquote. And it's like it doesn't matter what they're doing with the money, you know what I
Like if
mean?
like you said,
Like
if you're doing it in the name of Black love and Black liberation.
yeah, exactly. So but it's complicated for people, right? And it's hard for people to recognize each other's full humanity, which is why you still have Black people who can be like, I love Black people, and they say that, and in their head that does not include Black trans people, that does not include Black queer people, right? And it's fucked up, but that's actually pretty normal within, you know what I mean, our world, not even just within the United States, like within the globe.
Yeah, facts. What I've been seeing is, yeah, like we talked. You kind of like talked about it earlier. I think a lot of, I think people in general, I'm gonna say Black folks, like that's who we tailor our content to, and that's who I spend most of my time with. That's what I identify as, right? I think that we a lot of Black folks, you know, often want to put like Black skin first and not want to think about all the other things that like, I guess, like make up a person, right? We see that all the time. It's like Black folks not want to considering all the other identities that honestly make up our Blackness.
Yeah, it's like we're all Black. Let's just get along. Like Black first. You
Yeah.
feel me? But that just does not. And even a lot of the people who say, "Oh, I'm Black first," they be like, "Oh, I'm a man though." Like, you know,
Yep.
it's just in that same like, "Oh, okay,"
Like
but you
all
said
the
you're Black first.
all the identities only work when it's beneficial for men.
Right.
Like all the other shit only matters
Straight men.
when it's beneficial for straight men. Yeah. Like cishet men. That's the only time that you can have multiple, you know, identities. And it'd be okay.
I'm a Black man who loves football. That's all right. I'm Raider Nation.
You feel me? But anytime it comes to, you know, honoring and respecting all the different other aspects of Black folks, all the other different identities, you know, it's not
just
okay.
even how like systems of oppression work to oppress people or oppress people in the Black community. You know, it's like we're not all, we're all Black, but we all experience the world a lot different. You feel me? And Blackness does bring us together, but there's also these other systems work and oppress people differently. You feel me? Like, and that's where privilege comes into it, which you already know, of course, right? But
And if you challenge people on like actually like if you're saying that Black sex workers do not matter, if you're saying that Black incarcerated people do not matter, if you're saying that Black, like if you challenge people, they're like, well, no, that's not part of it. You know what I mean? It's like, so then what? Like, tell me specifically who are you thinking about, right? And people will not usually be real, but if they're being real, it's exactly what we've been saying. It's like cisgender, heterosexual Black men, and actually we didn't even mention disability. It's usually able-bodied and able-minded,
Facts.
right?
Facts.
Men, like, because if you're disabled, like that's the thing about, you see somebody on the street and if you think that they're homeless, if you think that they're quote unquote crazy, right, the way that you move around them is way different than the way that you move around anybody else, you
you're just
know.
not going to treat them as a human
And so
being.
it's wild, like, and it's a trip because like none of us always thought like this, right? And a
Mhm.
lot of what happens is you have to be willing to be open and learning and growing, but the difficulty is I find so many people just aren't willing, and it's like, damn, like, and what I spent a lot of my time doing when I was younger, especially, was trying to argue with people who, it was like, is that image of the person arguing with a brick wall, right? like,
That's
and
not
that's what
funny,
it's
but
like.
I don't know why.
No, but it is funny because like the thing is like when you realize how much time, or rather in my case, when I realize how much time I've dedicated in my life to arguing with brick walls, right? Black and non-black, right? Like so when I was younger, a lot of them brick walls were white people, right? As I got older, it became bigoted black people. And sometimes it's just like it's not worth it. And sometimes so Delancey and Blake, sometimes I'm just so fucking tired. It's like I don't drink very much, but it's like I'm gonna just be at this party, let you say your homophobic shit, drink this Hennessy, you know what I mean, and be good. Because sometimes I do not have the time or the energy to like go through it with you, and I'm just like I'm done, you know. So
That
either
shit
I
is
can,
so draining.
yeah, and
So draining.
you could retreat from the world, which I've done and I will continue to do sometimes, or you could just like be in it and surround yourself with love. And then the times that you're not surrounded with the love, is like how do you survive, right? And sometimes how you survive is like you'd be like, pass me the bottle. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which I'm laughing about, but that's even a whole nother thing in terms of like sometimes then there
Coping.
becomes dependency
Yeah.
on, yeah, there's an over dependency on things like alcohol or drugs to get us through, or you know what I mean, other things that can be fine in moderation. But if that's what you're doing, if you're self-medicating so much to get yourself through the world, you know what I mean, it's like fuck, why? And it's not even on you. There are systems that are pushing us toward these outcomes, right? Including like thoughts of suicide, right? Including depression and mental health, like including anxiety, all the shit that I deal with and that I have family and friends who deal with, you know? So it's like fucked because it's like, how do you, it's like, can I live? Really, that's what I'm trying to say. It's
And all
like
that
when
shit
it comes
plays
down
a
to
role
it,
in how you
can
can
I,
show up.
exactly, exactly.
Like you made the point, I guess around like, like being at a party and having to, basically pick and choose as if you're gonna defend your humanity tonight. You know what I'm saying? Like, do I have the strength to fit to essentially
Even like the bandwidth.
the bandwidth to defend my humanity, right? And me and Blake were talking before we got on the phone with you about like allyship and how, nigga, like I think people like to glorify allyship. Of course, it's nowhere as hard as like living the lives of the people that you claim to be supporting. But even like I think about like constantly having to check my friends and family, nigga, that shit is tiring. But I know it's not any.
Can't even imagine what that is
It's
like.
nowhere as tiring as like at any point in time I can disconnect and choose, and not have to suffer, the consequences of living as the folks that I'm trying to uplift, or trying to support.
Mm-hmm.
And even like that shit is like literally like me and Blake have times where we're talking to each other where we're just like literally depleted, fam. And at any given time we can like step outside and damn near like step into our privilege, you know what I'm saying? And like be
Mm-hmm.
protected by the cishet, our cishet identity, you know what I'm saying? And like
Yeah.
LGBTQ folks, black women, they don't have that privilege to do that. You feel what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's like it's just some shit because then like those categories overlap too. Because imagine you don't even have to imagine there are black queer
yeah.
women, there are black trans women, there are you know what I mean, black asexual people, right? And all this shit. And it's like Delancey and I and Blake and I actually, for folks who don't know, we've all facilitated workshops together and written together. And so like doing those workshops, it's been great because a lot of times you're in a more supportive space. But it's wild because like often that's more it's more either college educated folks, right? So they already have a certain idea of how to think about the world, right? Or it's folks of a certain privilege, like a certain economic status that we often don't embody ourselves, but we're educating those people, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
of a higher socioeconomic status. So it's like what happens when you really get on the ground, right? And so like when I was organizing in East Oakland, like that was something I had to deal with. Like in my organization and outside of my organization when I was just organizing, when I'm literally knocking on doors in East Oakland to talk to people, right? And generally, the way that people receive me is as more masculine. Like I'm small and I'm read as more masculine. I'm read as male, definitely. But well, so I laugh because more masculine in comparison to other queer people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like I'm read as like hella masculine, but then some people will question my sexuality, but it's not enough to be like, oh, he's a faggot, right? Like that usually is not what I'm dealing with. But so I even have like the privilege, quote unquote, right, of not being perceived as queer, and so that gives me like that's how I was even able to do the work because if I went out and my voice was a little bit more high pitched, I had a little bit more of a switch, or I presented my gender in a different way, right? I'm non-binary, but most people are just going to look at me and be like, that's a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not painting my nails because I have a beard because I'm not wearing things that are seen as traditionally feminine. And so organized in Oakland, I was able to do because of those privileges. And I also was able to see, like, people will tell me shit, like, you know what I mean? It's like if somebody's black folks who pass, right? Less so nowadays, but before, if you pass, right, or if you're like so mixed in certain ways that you're so racially ambiguous, people say anti-black as shit to you because they don't know you're black, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's like the three of us, like people know we're black, so they won't say that, and it's similar. Like people don't always know I'm queer, or yeah, that's the best way to put it. They don't always know, and so then they'll say out of pocket ass shit, and so the question is, do I have the bandwidth, right? And usually I'm like, you know what? Not usually. Often I'm like, it's not worth it. You know what I mean?
And
Because
never
it,
know
it
what that shit's
takes,
gonna lead to.
yeah, because it could literally be violent,
It could be
right? You know what I mean?
dangerous, my nigga.
Yeah.
It
Like,
could literally be dangerous. I've gotten to fights over shit like that, bro. Like sticking up for somebody. You know what I'm saying? So like
yeah,
that shit,
Put you in danger.
it can literally put you in danger.
Stick up for humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. And so that's why, like, one of the things that I try to do as like somebody who has some visibility online, at least, you know what I mean, is like retweet and engage with and support like monetarily like voices that are not mine, right? And specifically Black trans women of color, other non-binary folks, right? Like because the thing too is like just the LGBTQ thing is so funny and sad because like lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, queer, and then it continues to go on. Those identities do not always overlap, and many of the times the lesbian, gay, and bisexual are not trans friendly, right? And in fact are anti-trans. And so it's like it's some shit because you see it with Black people. It's like you are shit on because of your race, right? And then you gonna go be shitty to somebody because they're queer. And you see with queer people, you are shit on because of your queerness, right? And then you're gonna go be shitty to somebody because of their gender. It's like, what the fuck is our problem? You
Like,
know what
that
I
makes
mean?
zero sense to me.
Exactly, but we do
Oppression is
it. Like
like
as humans, we do it. Like, and it's some
intertwined with
shit because
everything.
you'll find like gay, especially gay cis men, often gay cis white men, but not only them, right? Who are talking shit about pussy, for example. Like, you know what I mean? Like, vagina. Like, you know what I mean? It's like actually some men have a vagina, and even if some men didn't have a vagina, what the fuck is wrong with the vagina, right? Like what? Like let's. And it's wild that that's even a conversation you have to have, and that people can be so immature and people can be so self-centered and so hateful. You know?
It's like what I realize is people don't actually hate bigotry. They just hate bigotry that's aimed at them. That's what it
That's
comes
it.
down to.
They
Like,
just want like a white supremacy or like a
yeah, like niggas,
everything is cool for them.
we just want a transference of power. Like, we just
Yeah.
want the power to be transferred. That's what like a lot of. That's what I finally like realized with a lot of folks who often do fall victim to like oppression. It's like they
Mm-hmm.
don't want all of oppression to end. They just want their oppression to end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes they even want to uphold. It's not even just like, oh, I'm not going to fight that oppression. Sometimes, like, actually, I want to hold this up as a pillar. You know what I mean? Like, I'm actually going to support. Like, I was just listening to a read, and they were talking about like Alabama and how people were pissed off about the abortion ban, and rightfully so. But then some of those same people are like, well, I don't want to see a kid's cartoon where Arthur's teacher is getting married to a man, right? Like they're both animals, so it's even ridiculous. But like they like took it off the air in Alabama, if I remember it correctly. So it's like wow, because you could be quote unquote progressive on one issue, right? If you want to call it that, or more left leaning, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then on some other issue, you're hella right leaning, right? And that's what it is with a lot of all of us, which includes Black folks. Like Black folks, there's a myth that Black folks are more homophobic or trans antagonistic, and I don't actually think that that's true. I think it shows up in different ways, and we have less material resources, right? So if I didn't get kicked out of my house when I got kicked out of the closet, actually, that's a story I'm not going to get into. But when my family like confronted me about it, I didn't get kicked out the house, but I was basically put on house arrest, right? So I had the resources to like my family kept me there. But often what happens with Black families, and it does happen with white families too, is like you might get kicked the fuck out, and that's why a lot of trans folks, before they're even at the age of consent, are considering sex work as a survival mechanism, right? And not even considering it, doing it because they have to, because they can't get a job, and because they don't have their family. So like Janet Mock writes about it actually in her book, not getting kicked out necessarily, but how she got involved in sex work in her first book, and how normal of a path that is for trans women of color, and how the I could never find the source for the statistic, but like that's the scholar in me being like I have to find it. But I couldn't find it. But there's the quote or the phrase that people say: trans women of color, the average life expectancy is 35 years old. And like whether that's like a true statistic, whether that comes from surveys, doesn't really matter. What matters is the fact that if you think about how many trans women elders we have, trans men elders as well, right? But specifically trans women because they're targeted in a specific way. It's like very few and far between, right? And so like Stonewall, we talk about Miss Griffin, we talk about all these other people, but the reality is there's like a handful of visible trans queer trans and or queer elders, and that's the shit that really gets you too. You know what I mean? Like as Black people, we are already, and I'm going on a tangent, but I think it's important. As Black people, we're already Black Americans who are a descendant of this fucked up ass transatlantic slave trade, right? We already lost a lot of things. We rebuilt it as Black Americans. We're beautiful and all of this, right? We have Black joy. We created, and at the same time, we lost hella shit. And then imagine being a Black American who lost all that shit, lost your language, lost your original culture, lost like, you know what I mean, people, lost family, lost all these things. And then on top of it, you queer, and so then you might lose your immediate family, right? You might lose your immediate siblings, your chosen family sometimes, and your family of origin, right? Your blood family. And so like that's the shit where it's like, God damn. And that's why we build, like that's why things like Pose are really important, because you see how queer and trans Black people build with each other, right?
Yeah.
And argue with each other and live with each other and be human, because often because we have to, you know what I mean? Like it's good that we have as much like queer kinship, but a lot of that comes from the fact that niggas don't like us, right? And so it's like, where do you go?
Then there is like, feel me, a means of building community by survival.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, one thing I heard you talk about like is like understanding your privilege, you feel me? And I think the way you discussed it and the way like you just had a lot of nuance with it, you feel me? I thought that was really powerful. So like what led to you, you know, understanding your privilege and being able to discuss it? Because I feel like a lot of times, especially in like college spaces, you know, people being a college student, you privileged, like regardless, you feel me? You got your UCLA ID or you got your UC Berkeley ID, you in college, so you're gonna have a form of privilege. But I've noticed in those spaces, a lot of people don't want to talk about their privilege, you know. So what led to you, you know, just being able to talk about the privileges you have, despite, you know, holding these identities that, you know, are oppressed by this white supremacist state?
Yeah, I mean, the short version is it's like it's a process over time, and I'm still, you know, working with it. But the short version is I was in regard to specifically gender, when I was studying abroad, which a fucking privilege, right? Even if I didn't have the money to do it and I had to do things to like the idea that I could study abroad, right? I studied abroad in Cape Town, South Africa. And while I was there, watching the way that like I was treated with women, and watching the way like even little, not, it's actually a very big thing. So many of us like were raised very patriarchal ways, right? And so that means that like we'll usually never let a woman walk home alone or things like that, right? Which on the one hand is good in terms of protection. On the other hand, is not good if somebody does not want that, right? And that comes from the idea not that society's going to attack the woman, but if it comes from the idea that the woman can't protect herself, right? So like we always have to think about our actions and where they stem from. But so in South Africa, watching a woman I knew get chased and basically like and having to defend her, right? Another time someone went out and like she said no to a man, he punched her in the nose. I wasn't there, but I heard the story later. Like there are certain experiences that and the reason I think South Africa was important, and I was already like 23, I think 24. I think I turned 25 over there. So I think I was 24. So I was already not grown because 24 is young, but grown in a lot of other ways, right? At least in the eyes of the state. And the reason I was able to see so much of the gender shit is because I was finally in a place where my blackness was not the only thing I was focusing on, right? So by being in, although Cape Town is mad white, like that's still hella black, hella blacker than like most of the cities we have in California, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so by being in Cape Town and being in South Africa, being in another country, my Americanness was something, the privilege of being like not even American, right? Because we're North American, we're more specifically United Statesian, right? It's like a weird word to say, but that's the reality. Because even we privilege what is America and how do we think about it. But so being there, I had to question my like class status. So even though I identify as someone who like grew up more upper working class, lower middle class, depending on how you want to think about it. And that's a conversation that me and my mom got into arguments about because she was like, "We're middle class," and I was like, "No, mom, we're not," because this, and anyway. But I say that to say, being there, I had to question my Americanness and I had to question my gender. Because, like, why can I walk home alone at 2 a.m. at night, not worrying about a damn thing when my friend, you know what I mean, and walk for blocks, like walk 20 minutes home from a
Yeah.
friend's place. And my friends, you know, my women friends could not walk a block or two without being harassed. And even when they were with me, they would get harassed. Like, there was a woman walking with me and a man, no, it wasn't a man, it was a boy, it was a student, like, grabbed her hand and, like, tried to kiss her hand. You know what I mean? And things like that. Some people might be like, well, that's not that big a deal. That's flattering. And it's like, no, it's not fucking
Who are
flattering.
you
Like,
to
and it's
determine what's
That's
flattering?
sexual assault.
exactly
Who
like
are you to
somebody
determine
literally grabbed your body, you know what I mean, and started to kiss you, put their lips to your hand, and like, and that's the least of it. People do much worse things, you know what I mean? So it's like man, like being studying abroad really changed my life. In a lot of ways, it changed the way I think about blackness in terms of like globally. It changed the way I think about gender. And at the time, I still identified as a cisgender man, and identified as queer. But it changed the way I thought in a lot of ways. And people don't always get that opportunity, right? And although I think my politics before I was 24 were decent, they got a lot better after that experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had to think about things a lot differently because that was summer 2014. So that was the summer that Mike Brown was killed and Black Lives Matter really popped off. But then shortly after that were also when critiques about, you know, focusing only on black men within this movement for Black lives, like that started to pop up. And so coming back from South Africa, I also was really listening a lot. And then I got involved a lot more. And that's actually when we started organizing together, was when I came back from South Africa. That's when you and me met, Blake, and then shortly after that is when you and me met, Delancey. So it's a trip where life takes you, you know what I mean? And what I try to do for people is like walk them through stuff and question a lot of things in ways that like I always try to think about, like, instead of seeing somebody who's like not intentionally being harmful, but still being harmful, instead of seeing that person and being like, what the fuck is your problem? Right? Like thinking about what are the social systems that, you know, I'm a sociologist. So it's like, what are the social systems that led to that? And what is your place in society that made you feel like you had to think like that? You know what I mean? So that's like my personal story.
Definitely. And I feel like if you want, like, yelling at somebody ain't really going to change or educate somebody.
Yeah,
But
but
they just, you know, in some ways.
yeah, no, I think like as Anne's talking, I'm like hearing what they're saying, and it's starting. I think like the questioning aspect of holding people accountable, I guess, or like challenging their thought process is something that I'm going to start implementing into my strategies as far as like allyship, because you know I think like it's super easy to just. I think that's also creating avenues for people to learn better. Like it's like helping them, guide them, like it's damn near like a therapeutic tactic, like guiding someone to their realization.
It's like almost asking questions. It's
You know, just like, okay, so
Socratic method or
I
something.
feel like that makes more sense than, you feel me, just like checking a nigga. Because for one, when you checking cishet men, like I don't know what niggas y'all know, a nigga's gonna get defensive. Period. Point blank. Period. Point blank. Like it's like you questioning it, and it's all a result of like patriarchy, right, and toxic masculinity or whatever. Like anytime you question a man's action, the first thing I want to do is defend their actions. And like I've realized I've had that with my, like I've that's been my experience as far as like me trying to hold cishet men accountable and like be an ally. Is like whenever I don't know why I think that's also a part of my masculinity, is like the first thing I want to do is check a nigga as opposed to like, you know, question a nigga or
like talk through it, swallow.
Yeah. Just like, all right, so bro, like why do you think it's okay to say that?
Yeah.
You know, and that's like those are things that I haven't done before, but I think that's definitely some stuff that I want to implement, because I think unless somebody fears you, like checking them ain't really gonna get you too far. That's what I realize.
And then if you putting fear into somebody else too,
you know what I'm saying?
If you only doing it like based off of fear, like you ain't really learning either.
Yeah, and it's just like that's also, I think, like once folks are only acting a certain way because they fear you, like when you're not around,
what are they doing?
They're gonna be their truest self, you know.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate you bringing that, like, questioning. Like, that's not a method that I've tried, and I think a lot of people can definitely benefit from that. And if you, as someone that's experiencing a lot more oppression than me, can navigate that, I think, you know, I could muster that energy.
You just might have to
do that work.
Meditate before that.
The shit is one thing. I'm also like, you know, this is the beauty of having someone that you fuck with so tough on the podcast. Like, and we're damn near 45 minutes in, fam, and I've had zero anxiety during this conversation. Like, it's not. You know, we've had, like, I don't know, knock to any of our other guests. I think they've all been fucking amazing. But yeah, it's
like
been,
we actually know you. In real life.
It's different.
There's a comfort level,
tweets, but
right?
we know you in
like,
the streets.
And there's a way we could talk about hey, Apple. I don't know if you heard her shake, but there's a way we could talk about things, you know what I mean? That's like really beautiful. And that was not there when we first met, right? It had to be built through struggle, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it wasn't always beautiful. The three of us have always, like, for the most part, gotten along, right? But it hasn't always been easy because, like, some of the foundations upon which we got to know each other, like the organizing, right? That was questioned through a lot of shit that harmed me and harmed people that I love, you know?
We should explore that because we have this on the outline. It's like discussing how we all met. We could dive into that. Y'all two met. Y'all knew each other before. Y'all both knew me, and before,
yeah, we met at Cal, right? And then
yeah,
on some organizing.
Y'all was up there in your ivory tower. I'm glad I met y'all niggas after because I probably would not have fucked with y'all. I know I could already tell.
You knew me when I was. You knew me when I was. At Cal.
What's that Netflix show? What's that Netflix show? You know what I'm talking about, Ed.
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about? Dear white people?
Yeah, y'all saw y'all dear white people shit. Y'all saw y'all dear white people shit. Oh, God.
Well, so, like, the wild thing, too, is, like, when I met Blake had, like, just been going through his transition of, like, being a student athlete and then being like, fuck this shit. This is you know what I mean, exploitative as hell, right? Mm-hmm. And then was moving into organizing, you know what I mean? And then he recruited me as a writer first for the organization we were with.
Shout out my nigga Blake, man.
Yeah, because I'd be writing and tweeting, and Blake was like, I like your shit. I think we need your voice. And so, like, that's how we got to know each other at first. And then we did organizing. We did statewide organizing in California around prison divestment, right? With ABC, the African Black Coalition. And that shit was really beautiful, but it was also really fucked up in so many ways. And when I finally quit, like, because that's how we got to know each other, right? When I finally quit, Delancey and I actually, I don't know how much you remember, but did we drive down together?
I was having this conversation with Khadijah. We drove to LA together. That's where I would say, like, me and like our relationship. No, it was just us two, nigga.
Was it just us two? I thought it was on the way back. My bad.
Shout out
it was on the way back.
Team.
It was literally just us two, nigga. Like, I remember that. Like, we both worked late. We both worked the dumbass late, which is why we couldn't go with everyone else.
Yeah,
and we met off 19th Street. You picked me up from the bar station.
Yeah, and we talked about real ass shit because, like, when you're in a car with somebody for 6 hours, like, it's like,
come on, fam. Like,
you had that pickup truck too, right?
You can't.
Hell no, this nigga had the. We did drive. Were you in a rental? We didn't use the pickup truck.
No, I don't remember what I was in. I think I might have been in a rental, but that was some shit. Because we got to talk about some real ass shit, and we got to talk about, like, some of the, because we were going to the that year is when Farrakhan was invited.
Yeah,
and
it was the one in LA, ABC in LA.
Wow. Yeah, and that was some shit because we were just talking about what's this gonna be like, how do we do this, and we also talked about work, right? Because at the time at that time I was editor. Was I editor in chief, Blake?
Honestly, I don't really remember.
I think I was editor in chief, and Blake was comms director, and then I was also, like, the prison divestment like director, or that might have come later. I can't remember the order, but we talked about the real ass shit, and we were talking about, like, Delancey, can you do some interviews and can you cover this? And that was the first time you had gone to ABC, and I remember actually after that you wrote a really beautiful piece about your experience.
That was my stuff. The first one we did, first ABC. That was your second one? Yeah, the first ABC was Santa Barbara. The one with LA was my second. Yeah, that was my second one.
It was the second, yeah. And then at that fucking one, like, when I watched, and I wrote about this, and I can send y'all the link. I think I might have before. But anyway, when I watched, like, Farrakhan speak, like, because I was like, let me just, like, before I'm just, like, saying shit from, like, the things I know of him, let me listen, right? So when I watched him speak, I was like, fuck, right? Like this is some like I didn't feel good, right? And then when I watched like people clap, like black people, black students for whom I am working, right? Black students with whom I'm building community,
No, you're
black students I
serving.
love, like when I watched
Yeah.
them like clapping for the shit that was like degrading my humanity and the humanity of black women, I was like, oh fuck, like nah. And then that's when I decided I was like, I can't work with this organization anymore, you know?
That shit was
So
a game changer for me too, fam. Like
Me three.
y'all gotta realize I didn't have that student organizing back except for high school. Like Berkeley High, we had like a strong BSU or whatever. But even
Right.
then, I was like super on my like black cis head shit. I was hell out of pocket. Like I was I was the vice president of the Black Student Union at Berkeley High,
You would have invited for our
and I was sick.
Day.
Like I was sick. Like I was foul.
Yeah.
I was super foul, right? But I didn't have that college experience where I got to like form these politics or whatever, and so like I came into ABC thinking like, all right, this is like the black utopian experience, especially after like meeting Blake, Khadijah, and I think our comms team was probably the most.
our comms team was lit.
Yeah, and like when you think about like politics, I think we're the only ones that were like constantly trying to hold ourselves accountable and be better. I can only say that because like y'all are the three that I know the most, and like y'all.
I mean, that was the core of it.
Yeah, so when I got to this space and I seen that black folks were creating the space in which other black folks can be degraded, I was like, all this shit is a farce. I don't fuck with any of this shit. Like, I'm over it, nigga. And like, I never formally quit, but like, nigga, from when I never formally joined, I felt like, you feel me? Like, I only was in that shit because of y'all three.
Yeah.
So it was like, when I finally saw that, like, I'm like, wait, we created a space, knowing that we have black women in this space, knowing that we got black LGBTQ folks in this space, we brought in a nigga who constantly doesn't miss the opportunity to degrade them. I can't be down with this shit.
Yeah.
Like I was, and on top of that, me and Ant had just had like all these deep ass conversations about who they were as a person, right? And I'm getting like brought into like the black queer experience, and then 7 hours later, I got to hear Farrakhan talk.
He was
And that's the thing is, so Blake
too.
at the time, Blake was on the exec like committee, and so and for folks who don't know the way it works, like we as execs didn't decide, like the conference is planned by the hosting school, and then like exec can like make some decisions and helps with stuff, but mostly it wasn't us. So we as staff, went and did all this, but Blake was like still trying to fight, and literally, I think almost got into a fight at that conference. Like you'll have to speak on it, Blake, if I remember correctly. But like Blake was trying to fight with exec about like this fuck shit. So on the one hand, I was mad as hell because I was like, this is some fuck shit. And I remember, Delancey, you basically quit too. But like me and Khadijah talked at one point because she was still on staff, right? And we've talked since then, and she's like, damn, I should have left when you left, right? Because like she was part of it. Is like one of the reasons I had stayed so long is because you want to fight, quote unquote, from the inside, right? It's like if there's this much violence happening while I'm there, right? It's like,
imagine
what
when
would be
you
happening
leave
when I'm not there, right? But then that means that you're also a part of the violence, and I also
does that make you complicit? Like, what the fuck?
It does often, right? You know what I mean? And then that also means that you are part of the, you become like a sacrificial lamb. And like when that shit happened, I was like, nah, you know what I mean? Like after that conference, like I think I stayed for the whole thing. And then after that, I was like, I can't do this. You know what I mean? Like I can't be dedicating so much of my life and my organizing to this work when like this is the leadership that we have, and this is the leadership that we're looking toward. And this leadership that we're looking toward is looking backward. You know what I mean? It is making up shit about black people and about how black homosexuals didn't exist before, which is like mad ahistorical, which
some revisionist ass shit. Like what the fuck?
Exactly.
I'm like, nigga, I don't know a lot, but I know that ain't it.
Yo,
the white man created it. Like, shut up, Farrakhan.
Yeah, he talked about us being like, he talked about black queer people being the invention of a white scientist.
Literally like science experience for my niggas.
No. Like
I was sick. Sick.
The what, man?
Yeah.
Like that's how that nigga.
I'm like, I'm like, whoa,
bruh. That nigga was so foul.
He also came like 1,000 deep, so it made it look like he had hella more followers in there than he did.
Bruh, they really,
Like,
they actually reserved the front seats for his fucking followers. You feel me? So like, no students, nobody could sit in the front. He had his whole fucking people come in there. So them motherfucker was standing and clapping. I'm like, man, this is straight some propaganda, bruh.
And then you have folks really from our leadership team on the stage.
Well, folks from the leadership
supporting
team
this nigga
was in the fucking nation. That was the whole issue, you know.
And that shit. It was wild. Like I said, me and Ant, we had just shared damn near a moment. Like I think that was like, that's where I felt like that drive down me and you had. I feel like that was like really where our relationship formed, like where it got super deep. Because then over like the next year, me and you were doing workshops together, nigga. We were constantly being in contact with one another, and I'm like, yo, y'all got my nigga fucked up. Like y'all niggas are sick. I'm not fucking with it at all. And it was definitely heartbreaking because that was again my first introduction to like black student organizing from me developing better policies at that time, right? Like I had already been a part of it, but it was just like kind of like a revamp. Like all right, boom, I'm working to actively be better. I know the ways in which I support this system. Boom, now let me go. You feel me? Fix all the shit I done did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was mad. I mean, it was mad heartbreaking because for the three of us, that was where, like, the degree to which the change happened, is different for all of us. But that was where a lot of our political shifts were happening, and where like we were able to practice language among each other and politics, and think about how do we think about Black people and how do we think about like what we're doing for each other. So like the beautiful thing is that a lot of that happened through the organizing with ABC, right? But then the fucked up thing is that like even when we brought up complaints of things, it was like, oh no, that's not a big deal, or oh, you being sensitive, or
We were watching
like,
people be
actually, we're not
silenced in
doing
real
that.
time.
Say what?
We were watching folks be silenced in real time.
In real time,
Really, all
you know what I
all
mean?
these
So it was
systems
just
of
some
oppression
shit because I just remember
showed up
like
at
Blake
once.
having to deal with that, right, in the exec board, and then eventually being like, nah, I can't do this, and then Khadijah leaving, and then other people leaving too. You know what I mean? And at one point they asked me back for like a panel or something. I was like, I can't do this, y'all. Like, you know, like I cannot, like
Bruh,
I
they
will
really
not,
asked, bruh.
I will not, I
Bruh.
won't. You know what I mean? Like, and I love some of the individuals, right? But like as an organization, given the leadership as it was, as I knew it, like no, you know, which is sad, because there's really beautiful, like to get like, you know, like we were key in getting $25 million, you know what I mean,
Divested.
divested from private prisons in the whole University of California system.
And that was
That's a
straight
big ass
comms team. That
fucking
was
win.
straight. You
And in
feel
a
me?
lot of ways, that work is what pushed me to do like the doctoral work that I'm doing now on
Yeah.
incarceration, because I realized that win was huge, but also didn't impact people who are currently incarcerated, right? So my work ideally is not going to just like be a policy win or just be a money win, but be work that like looks at how folks are actually being impacted inside the humans. You know what I mean? Like people who are locked up, like my cousin who passed away. You know what I mean? Like so shit like that. Like it's so sad that like there's so much potential there, right? And then this is what came of it. You know what I mean? And it came from stepping on the fucking necks and heads of Black, queer, and trans and women folk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it was also, to add on to that, just very classist too. You know?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I don't know. I still got funk with some of them niggas for real though.
Yeah,
real.
I had to like.
If I see some of them
It's
niggas that still
unfortunate.
funk, to
It's
be
wild.
honest
I
with
had
you,
to talk Blake
like,
off of a couple of incidents. Like y'all, fam. Like you know, niggas don't know any better. Like let's just forgive them for they not know. Like,
but I'm still very grateful that, you know, at least the relationships that we all have. You feel me? Like we still.
if
we
it
still
weren't
was
for
rocking
ABC,
for each other. You
I
feel
mean,
me?
like honestly, if it weren't for ABC, I don't know where I'd be. Like I think Aunt made points where they said, you know, people have to be willing to learn. Like it would just so happen that I was in a space where I wanted to be a better person in general, and I ended up coming across y'all, and you know I'm super grateful for that. So, you know, of course, they was on some fucking nigga shit, but you know they brought me people like again Anthony, Blake, and Khadijah. So, and I didn't, unlike y'all, I didn't have that much time invested into them. I was only there for like 6 months. It was a bunch of shit I didn't go to. It was a bunch of shit I didn't participate in because I never, you know, I was like, I felt like I was one of the only few niggas that was really like from, you feel me,
Yeah.
the community and shit. Like I wasn't, you know, like I was
You
really,
were.
I was like one
Yeah.
of the few niggas who was like from the places that motherfuckers wanted to serve, right? So like I always felt like a little ostracized. I wasn't a part of the UC Cal State system, so I always felt like a little like out of place. But with y'all three, I always felt hella at home. So I'm like, all right, these niggas make it worth it. Fuck it.
Yeah, and I think one thing too, learning from ABC was also like, what is foul? You feel me? Or like, what is fucked up with these politics? Because at the same time, I was like, this is when I was really reading, you know, To Die for the People, really starting to study the Panthers. You feel me? Because like I joined organizing out of passion, but I didn't necessarily have the political education. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, all right, ABC, this is the only shit I see right now. You feel me? But I was also like in Oakland and shit, doing shit, protesting and whatnot. But that was the only organization I really saw. And I'm like, damn, these motherfuckers is really just straight up in the academy. You know what I'm saying? And then it's like really being, you know, when you outside, you really see the issues that black folks are facing. You feel me? And just seeing, you know, homeless, houseless people in Oakland. You feel me? And the majority of them are black. And that's where we really got the idea for People's Breakfast Oakland too. You feel me? It was like, all right, how do we actually serve the community and not just black students. So there was a lot of fuck shit, but a lot of that shit, I learned a lot, of like what is foul and where does liberation actually come from. You feel me?
Yeah, and even our politics around because they're a black nationalist org, and I don't know about y'all, but I don't identify as a black nationalist. And so that was an interesting thing because the nation state in itself is like a colonial concept, right? And so how do we think about
Yep.
blackness? You know what I mean? And how do we think about being on indigenous land? And how do we think about being a stolen people on indigenous land? And I remember even having conversations about that early on of if we're thinking about reparations and we're thinking about a plan, what does that mean for indigenous people, right? And those were questions I had. Uh, it's just a trip because I think while I was part of the org at one point, I did identify as a black nationalist, and since then I'm nah. I mean, I'm black at my heart, and I'm a black leftist. But in terms of how do I, you know what I mean, a black socialist as well. But in terms of trying to build a black nation within the United States, nah, you know what I mean? Nah, especially given all the shit we've been talking about. If on an
Shit
individual,
is mass colonialism, mass.
yeah,
It really is. And ABC was really on just some capitalist shit too. It was oh, we just need more black businesses. You feel me? So the nationalist politic that ABC had was on some it was basically some Nation of Islam type shit. Let's all put our pennies together type shit.
Yeah, it's wild. It really is wild to think about because I don't even know what they're doing now. You know what I mean? I'm so disconnected from that and disconnected from the people who are active in it that I don't even know. So I don't know if things have changed at all. I don't know, but yeah, it's wild how much of our political development happened through that in really positive ways, but also in the negative, seeing the shit that we didn't want, right? And sometimes you have to go through that. So I didn't have to, but in my case, I did identify as a black nationalist for a little bit. And through that, I realized, oh, actually, this is not what I want, right? This is not how I want to think about black people and our identity and this fucking, in this nation,
Yeah, that was a moment for us. We're an hour in. Ant is not doing this for free. I want y'all to know this. This nigga is not doing it for free.
To be clear, I did say if we go over.
They said they would give us the plug though.
Because that's family, right? You know what I mean? And if y'all were yo, I can't pay you for this episode, I'd be yeah, I got you. Because y'all fam. You know what I mean?
We don't pay cishet straight men. We don't do that. We don't pay them niggas. Y'all niggas gonna do this labor for the F, nigga. Solidarity, nigga.
The thing is, Ant probably would have done it for free if we really asked.
But what would that
no.
Would that be true to our politics?
It isn't. That's why I'm
so we gotta pay this nigga.
What's your fee? You feel me?
And something we haven't discussed yet that we usually do at the beginning of the episode is Black Joy.
and you're one of the people who really taught me about Black Joy. To be honest, I remember you talking about it a lot on Twitter back in the day. Maybe 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That really makes me happy because I remember actually, Blake, when you taught my piece. I think that came out in December 2016. You taught my piece in your with your students, you know. And I remember just that's it's a trip fucking Delencia, and I think you know this too because you Blake, I know you know this because you taught it, but Delencia, you know it because you are a journalist, were a journalist, do some dope ass writing and journalism, and so to see your name on a piece that's amazing, to see your work being taught,
shit feels so good.
Yo, it's wild. It's what the fuck?
I think it's I think it's that feeling of you matter. Honestly, that's what I feel.
And that was wild. You know, because my students literally wrote papers about that shit. They're Anthony Williams, you know. So it was cool because I really know this nigga Ant. You feel me? You know. And then they're talking about the author. You know, Anthony Williams was talking about Black Joy as this revolutionary practice, and I'm just smiling on the inside, but I'm teaching, so I can't really smile like that. You feel me? So that shit was raw. I wish you could have seen my class.
Since that man came out, you was I can't smile. I got a mug. But yeah, Black Joy. I mean, the thing is so I'm pretty open and honest about dealing with depression and anxiety. It's something I've dealt with since at least I was 13, 14,
Mm-hmm.
around puberty, you know what I mean? I think is when it like really hit, although it may have been happening before and I wasn't recognizing it. But it took until I was like 26 to know, like basically graduating Berkeley to know that, because I was a non-traditional student, a transfer student, I've been working, I've done all kinds of shit. But it took me that time to know actually that I was dealing with like depression, and that I was dealing with anxiety, and those things like impacted, as Delancey said earlier, how I show up, right? Like how I can show up. And so Black joy is like hella important for me as somebody who like identifies as disabled through my mental illness, right? But in general, it's like you literally, like, we won't survive, and the only way that we have survived so far is through Black joy, right? A lot of research that looks at slavery, right, the enslavement of African people here in the United States, looks at the way that Black women, for example, would wear like gold earrings, right? And how that was like a moment of Black joy and resistance. How like actually making fun of massa, like you could get caught doing that shit, and so often it was literally life or death. But like that was the shit that like would keep you going, right? And that's how we've survived so long. And I don't want to make it. I hate when we just think of ourselves as like resilient, because like that ignores how many people we have lost, right? To violence from other people, to our own selves, to violent systems, right? So I don't want to do that and just be like, well, as Black people, we just so resilient, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we are, but also at what fucking cost, right? So part of that is for me, Black joy, that the easiest way for me to say is we can't exist without it, right? Like, and so that is sometimes like that's Ant and Apple, right? Like me, like I was going through some shit, I've been going through some shit, and I had wanted a dog for a long time, and like having a dog has really helped me, right? It's really brought me a lot of joy. Seeing pictures of like kids or spending time around kids and seeing like the future, and it's easy to be like, shit, what world are they inheriting? But we could also think of it like how are they living in this moment? How do kids just embody happiness and joy? How does music make us feel? You know what I mean? How does creating, right? Like the fact that y'all are on 44 episodes, or this might be the 45th because the live show, right? That you're on 45 episodes, right? Of like hella Black, when I remember when this was just like an idea, you know what I mean? Like that fucking for me is Black joy, you know what I mean? Like
Facts.
y'all are doing this shit and like got a fucking Patreon. You got like white people paying you money, which they should be, right? Black people paying you money, non-Black people paying you money, because there's gems that are dropped on the show. Y'all bring hella beautiful Black people together. Y'all do live shows. Y'all do people's breakfast. Like, you know what I mean? Like all this shit, like, which includes labor, right? So like Black joy it doesn't come without work, right? Whether that's
Ooh.
introspection, right, or whether that's literal work, right? Like what does that look like? But Black joy is necessary, like, whew, you know what I mean?
I
Like, and
felt that
my,
Black joy don't come without work. Shit, I did there. Fuck my
you
chest.
know, because that shit doesn't, it's not like, that's the thing, is like self-care, the way that we talk about it often in social media and shit is just like, oh, well, a bubble bath, or oh, treat yourself or whatever. But it's like, no, that's not like, that doesn't cure the wounds that I have from like emotional abuse from growing up, right? You know what I mean? Like me getting a fucking new pair of shoes does not fix that. Like it makes me feel better temporarily for some reason, like for some reasons and for some things, but like
It's not
to
healing
create,
though.
yeah, to create the joy is also that means you have to work through some of the healing. So it's not always cute, it's not always fun, it's not always Instagrammable, but like that joy, to get to the joy and to have those moments of like bliss and to have those moments of euphoria, like that shit takes work, you know what I mean?
Food.
It's
But
wild. I
when
feel
you
like as
get
Black
there,
people, it's impossible to exist without working. Cause even
mm,
your
Joy takes
joy.
fucking
even your
work
joy
because you have to
requires
fucking heal
work.
from your trauma and shit, and like really figure out why that means something to you. You know, because even the first time I remember hearing Black joy, I'm like, joy, nigga, what? Like I really had that reaction. I think like joy.
Yeah.
Then I had to take some time to really understand. Like, all right, how do I actively try to find joy in my life? You know what I'm saying? And especially, it's easy when things are going well, but when things are going hard, it's like, how do you like make sure to find joy? You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
As part of self care, because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
when we first started organizing, people wasn't really talking about self care. Like I think it's become like a buzzword now. I don't know,
Yep.
you know, and like people, oh, self care this, self care that. I'm like, we didn't really know that shit when we first started organizing, you know.
Yep.
But now it's
And a
like,
lot of people sacrificed a lot because they were not caring for themselves. They weren't taking
right,
the time. They weren't, because we're like, it's like you know what I mean? It's Patricia Hill Collins talks about like what's it called? a matrix of domination, I believe is, yeah.
Yeah.
And part of that is like you have different identities within that space, and so you could be privileged as hell as a university student and also be organizing, and also which means like it takes you have to have time and all this, right? But also be being fucked over by the university system, right? And also not be getting enough sleep, and also not taking care of yourself. So it's like you could be this privileged ass university student and still be going through some shit. And that's what was happening to us, right? We're at fucking Berkeley, one of the best institutions in the world, and not taking care of ourselves, like point blank period. Like most of us were not. And when I was in South Africa, I was seeing photos on my timeline when I still had a Facebook of like people getting their ass beat, basically photos and videos by the Berkeley PD, right? When like the riots are what they call them, but uprisings, you know what I mean? When the uprisings were happening. So it's like a trip to even think about like, how do you heal your wounds, right? And how do you not just always go, 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 which is something that I think all three of us like struggle with, is like, what happened? Like, do you actually have downtime? Like I think both of y'all niggas were on vacation, or was it just you, Blake? But like seeing that honestly made me hella happy. I was like, Blake needs a fucking vacation. You know what I mean? Like Delancey needs a vacation because we're so used
been
to
trying
always
to get me on one. I ain't been on a vacation. I don't know what the fuck that is since Pac died.
I've really been telling Delancey to take a vacation.
You need to go.
Damn near every
You need
time
to
I
go.
see this nigga, I'm like, hey, bro, when you get your passport, bro, we out this motherfucker.
You gonna become one of them passport bougie blacks.
Hey, man.
Not me, nigga. I'd rather die.
Hey, how many stamps do you have?
But nah, and my fault. My bad for cutting you off, fam.
No, you good. Basically, I was just gonna say though, like I just remember even like seeing that on my time, like I was like smiling, you know what I mean? Because like we work hella hard all the time just to exist, let alone do all the other things we need to do. So like that doesn't always have to be a vacation for you, like Delancey, right? I think it's important to do that, but it does need to be like a break sometimes. It does need to be like kicking it with your family. It does need to be, you know what I mean? Like there has to be that in your life, because otherwise it's not sustainable. You know, and a lot of times we frame it as it's not sustainable and you won't do good work, but it's like outside of this capitalist frame set or mindset, this frame where it's like, oh, I'm taking care of myself so I can do better work or do more work. It's like, not like you need to take care of yourself because you need to take care of yourself.
Just in the name of taking care of yourself, not in the name of like taking care of myself so that I can be more productive.
Yep.
Facts. With that being said, what Black Joy moments have we had over the last, week, month, whatever? For Blake and I, last time we did an episode was, I don't know. That wasn't
It was
Chicago.
like a week ago. No, we did the
Dreaming. So yeah, it's been a week for us. But Ant, for you, what's like been one of your Black Joy moments over the past like month or a couple weeks?
Actually, today. So I run a race and ethnicity working group on campus. It's mostly like we invite speakers who are at the, who are doing race or ethnicity research, right? So because it's in sociologists, it's mostly sociologists. And what I did today, me and my co-organizer, her name's Harleen Kaur. She's a Sikh Punjabi woman. She's dope as fuck. We organized like a brunch for Black and brown people, right? And we did it under the banner of Race and Ethnicity Working Group, but really it was just like us. And we had a whole conversation. It was like from 12 to 3. And we had a whole conversation about just like what it means to be outside this university, like what this university does to us. There's some undergrads there, there's some grads there. There were no staff or like custodial people or anything like that. Like, so being transparent, right? It was still all students, whether they're graduate students or undergraduate students. But it was just beautiful to be in that space because literally, like, Delancey, you know this, Blake, you know this, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know this. Like, you will be one of, anywhere from 200 to a few thousand Black students on your campus that has anywhere from 1,000 to hundreds of thousands of students, right? You know what I mean? Like, so when you think like that, it's like, damn, like I'm literally 1% to 3% of this campus. And so that means I'm not even going to see Black people on campus walking around. So my Black Joy moment was like me organizing this space, right? Where we had food for each other. We just got to talk. We got to be real. At one point, someone was crying. You know what I mean? We laughed hella. We told jokes. We had music. And like, we just got to be in that space together, which is dope. Cause like, I don't like LA. UCLA is like a mess itself, like the institution, and not specifically all of them are, right? But in specific ways it is. But to be in that violent ass space with beautiful ass people is like, if I gotta be here, then I'm gonna bring my niggas with me. You know what I mean? And that's what it was today for me. That was my Black Joy. It's just like seeing all those faces.
Yeah, when you were talking, it kind of reminded me of the live podcast that we have on college campuses. Like, I think that's something that I think when people see us doing a live podcast, it's like, oh, like boom, their podcast is growing. But it's like, in addition to us going and having these podcasts, we're creating these like safe, not just us, right? Like the people that help us host the podcast, like the students.
Mm-hmm.
Like the students, in addition to us too, like we're creating and crafting these very safe and inclusive black spaces that on campuses of thousands of people, where it's only a couple hundred, if that, black folks, right? Like we're creating these spaces where black folks can come together and build community, and that's the part of the live podcast that I fuck with the most, right? Like, of course, like, you know, niggas get paid or whatever, they get the chance to leave home to do something that we never thought we would be doing, but the fact that we can be a part of building safe and inclusive black spaces on these extremely white college campuses,
Yeah.
that's the shit that make it all worth it.
Like a student one time said, like, this is the first time I've really felt safe on my campus.
And they were a fucking senior. That shit
That
was
shit
nuts.
hit me. I'm just like, what? Like, what did we do? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, maybe we sell ourselves short or whatever. But like, I was like, damn, like, just the podcast really brought that. You feel me? That was nuts.
Yeah, that's wild. Because I remember Black Wednesdays at Berkeley, like actually were dope. Like just to even if you could only stop by for a moment, just to see Black people, you know what I mean? Like in this space was just like it meant so much, you know what I mean? Because like there's just so few of us. And then the other thing too is like we haven't really talked about too much. We don't need to, but I think it's worth mentioning that's like Black people who are opting into their Blackness, right? That doesn't even include the Black people who are on campus who don't look at you, right? And look the other way for whatever reason, right? Because that shit's hella, like that happens here in LA. People don't like give you the nod. Like, you know what I mean? Like I've looked at people, especially on the West Side, like it doesn't happen very often. And I ended up writing my MA paper about it the few times it did happen, because like it was just wild how little people wanted to connect with each other. But when you do connect with somebody, right? And it was usually Black men, but not always. With Black women, it was usually a smile, but there was a nod that would happen sometimes. Like what that means and what kind of connection that brings you, and how that could literally change your day. You could be having a shitty ass day, and you see beautiful Black people, or I'll speak for myself. I see beautiful Black people. I'm like, oh shit! Like it makes me appreciative in ways that I wasn't before. You know?
Yeah. And something we talked about earlier, we like lightly touched on, was all the different things that we're doing, and specifically to you, right? Being a PhD student. And I don't know if that always comes with being a TA. Are those things like a requirement?
Damn
Usually, yeah,
So-
almost every program.
Yeah. So being a PhD student, being a TA, being, I don't know how much you're writing these days. I often see you post things, but I don't know like if there's always like brand new content. But basically, like, how have you been? How has that experience been, like navigating this new form of being a student, right? But then also trying to do all your other passions and things that you like doing. How has that been for you? Because I feel like that's the norm now with folks, right? Like we're all just
doing hell with things at once, trying to find
it
a way
means
how
of
to do it.
survival,
Yeah.
and it means of, you know, being our truest selves, right? We all out here doing hella different things. And so like, how has that experience been for you, and like how have you been navigating that? And if you have any tips for the listeners and shit, even me and Blake, like, yeah, what has that been like for you? How you navigating that?
It's been shitty.
No hope from out the gate.
Yeah, fuck.
Out the gate, like, okay, nigga, what else is new?
It's been shitty, but I will go back to what I said earlier. I still think I made, like, because I got into a few different schools, which is wild, because like I went to public schools, I went to community college. I didn't expect to go to Berkeley. I didn't expect to be in a PhD program. So this shit is wild for me. I'm about to be 30 this year, and I just didn't know that this is what 30 would look like. I didn't know that I would see
Big
30,
3-0.
like all this shit, right? It's been shitty. And also, like, one thing that I was just tweeting about it, Dr. Karita Brown, she's amazing. She's my advisor, and she's an amazing author and sociologist and researcher and all these things. And what she was saying is, like, you have to be a little bit crazy to apply to grad school and then go, right? Same applies to law school, same applies to medical school. But in
Especially,
particular,
when
there's a
it's
certain
gonna be
way
too, you feel
in
me?
which you think about grad school. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I'm going to school for 5 to 6 years to get my PhD, and then I'm not guaranteed a job after that. And then with that, right, I might have to, not might, I will have to travel from my home institution or from where I'm from to get a job, right? So like that shit is real, right? And that's sometimes if I have a family at that point, right? Not my family of origin, not like my siblings and my parents and stuff, but like say I have like a partner and kids and things like that, like I have to uproot them, right? Or I have to leave, like, or if I stay where I am, that limits my options, right? So all the shit is wild. So I say all the shitty things to say that, like, and yet we still choose it, right? And I choose it because I'm a fucking square. Like, I'm a nerd. Like, from like a very early age, I was like,
you talk about that, but I don't think people like fully, like, you talk about being a nerd actively. But I think like people like take it in passing, like, oh yeah, but like nah, you really fuck with this school shit.
Yeah, that's the
really you fuck with this reading, you fuck
with it.
You fuck with this ProQuest searches, you fuck with this transcriptions and
this
shit.
Nigga got on the podcast, start talking about sites.
You
like,
fuck
nigga,
with these literature reviews and shit.
When I tell you that last Friday I was actually looking at PDFs at this time, like I was
You're
like
gross.
looking up research articles. No, and I was.
Did you at least have
like,
an alcoholic beverage?
And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me, right? Like, what the fuck? Like,
that's sick, fam. That is sick.
I know, I'm disgusting. And the thing is, like, so like, and I think the thing is, when you look at somebody, right, the three of us, I would say, are attractive, right? And when you look at somebody attractive, that does not make that you're like, nah, they ain't really that square. They ain't that much of a nerd. And it's like, actually, nah, like, I'm nerdy as fuck. You know what I mean? Like, and what I like is eternally learning, right? So like, you have to be open in terms of what we were talking about earlier. You have to be open to like self-critique and people critiquing you to be able to expand your worldview. And that was not somebody I always was, but I have always been somebody who likes to learn about shit. Like to keep it 100 with you, like I would be in the bathroom, right, taking a shit, and then I would like,
the mud
and
man.
this is before cell phones, right? So there was nothing, and like I would look. This is when I was younger, and I'd like see on the ground we had Dow, right, like the chemical to clean the bath, and I'd like read that shit. Like I read the back, and I'd be like, okay, ingredients, like
you just gotta thirst for knowledge, fam. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and the thing is, and that's just what it is. And so for me, being a PhD student has been great in that I've been able to be like, I don't get paid well, so that's important to know, but people don't know this about PhD programs. Most PhD programs, as opposed to your bachelor's or your master's, are fully funded. So you're going to get in the state of California, across the United States, you're going to get anywhere from like $15,000 a year to $34,000 a year, right? That's like what you're going to make. It sucks.
Hold on, wait.
You said 15.
You said fully funded. So you're saying like your school is paid for, and then on top of that, you get that like stipend or whatever?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I need 34 bands if I'm going back to school for sure.
34 bands. What the fuck you gonna do with that?
They said
15, is your rent paid for?
15 to 34.
No, your rent is not paid for. So that's the
good
thing,
luck
right?
with that 34,000 living in Los Angeles. Like, what?
And I'm not even making that, right? So like the way that it works. So when I got into UCLA, and it's important for people to hear this who are considering PhDs. Another thing too is you could apply to a PhD program straight after your bachelor's. Like you don't need your master's, and a lot of people don't realize that. I didn't. Yeah, because what happens is you get your master's along the way. So like I just got
master's
the email yesterday.
Is a scam sometimes, huh?
Masters can be a scam because like often if it's a terminal master's, for example, your MSW, the master's in social work, that's good. You can go work, right? But like you wouldn't want to get a master's in sociology because you can't do much with that. Like you can teach at a community college, but community colleges are actually much more competitive than people realize to teach at. So like you might get a job teaching like a class or two, but you're not going to get full-time money with just your master's. You usually need, in 2019, you need your PhD. So the thing about that is like when I got into UCLA, I think I got offered like $17,000 or $19,000 a year. That didn't include summers, and summers often are not paid. And so they expected me to live in Los Angeles, California, pay my rent, eat food, go out, do whatever, right? And help family, because that's the thing that I, as a black ass person, do too, right? They expected me to do that on like that salary. Then I got a bump up to $25,000 because I got this fellowship. So for the last 2 years, that's what I was making, right? $25,000 a year.
With $25,000, you can get like food stamps and stuff with that kind of shit.
Yeah,
but can you do that though? In theory, that's what I'm saying. And like in theory, like when you look at like government assistance programs, like anything under like, from what I remember, is like shit under like $30,000, you didn't qualify for everything.
Yeah,
but as a student, you can't get that.
You can as an undergrad, and sometimes you can as a grad, but because the poverty line is like I want to say $16,000 or $17,000, so at 25, I'm above the poverty line for a family of one. Although I'm not like it's wild because like $25,000 is not enough money to live in Los Angeles, and also when you think about
Where's that
homeless,
enough money to live
excuse me,
anywhere?
anywhere. But if you think about homeless houseless people, or you think about families
Yeah,
living on that salary, it's like, damn. Like, but you try not to make those comparisons. But
yeah.
I got that bump up, right? And then I got a competitive national fellowship. So now I'm
Congrats
making
on
more
that,
than the
by the way.
25, or I'll start next year. But like even with that, that is the cap at that is 34, right? And it's 34 for the whole year. So that does include the summer. But it's like, goddamn, like even I'm one of the most top paid, or starting next year, I'll be one of the most top paid graduate students in the nation, right? And I'm making $34,000 a
That
year.
is fucking disgusting.
Isn't that wild? Because the
And you're
thing is, as you
teaching,
said earlier, as a TA, like that
grading,
means
all that.
like I have this last quarter and the quarter prior and the quarter prior to that, I had 25 students in each of my three sections. So I had 75 students,
Oh
right?
my
Each
God, I
quarter I've
want to
had
throw up just
75
thinking about
students.
it.
Like that's hella students.
That
And
sounds terrible. I'm sorry. They might be
plus
great
I'm
students, even if they're
writing,
great. You're
right?
gonna throw
Plus
up.
I'm researching. Plus I am doing anything else that I want to do or that I need to do, right? I also work another job because like that's not enough money,
Fam,
and
this
I
is
also
one part of you. We're
like
talking about just school. Just
it's
school,
wild.
nigga. This is one part of you.
It's wild. It's wild. But yeah, that's I'll stop there because I've been talking about it a lot, and but yeah, it's some shit. It's some shit.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, that was there's all the shitty things, but within it, what I have loved doing is teaching. What I have loved doing is mentoring. What I have loved doing is like being black and queer, like in these spaces, right? Like it doesn't always feel good, but it's important for people in these university spaces to see it, not necessarily so that they go to grad school, because you only should go to grad school if you're really serious and really want a PhD, and if you want a PhD for a particular reason, which like depends on you, right? What you want to do. But it is so that people just in undergrad and in the community see like, yo, you could be a black grad student. Like I didn't know that that was a thing you could do. Like until a few years ago, like I would say about 6 years ago, until 6 years ago, I thought that the only type of doctor there was a fucking medical doctor. I didn't know you could be a doctor of sociology,
For
a
real, for
doctor of
real.
philosophy, a doctor of Latin. Like the fuck is that? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know that. So I think it's important to see these possibilities, even if you're like, fuck that, I'm never gonna do it. Right? It's important to know because it's like we have to have black people in all spaces, and I do not mean that to say that like we have to have black police officers, for example, because like
Thank you.
fuck 12. But what I mean is that if you're gonna have like a space, for example, like undergrad institutions like Berkeley, like UCLA, like that have such low black populations, it's also important to make sure that they also have support while they're there, right? So it's like if we're going to be in these anti-black ass places, then it's also important for them to know that they can move higher within these places, right? And then eventually become a Dr. Anthony James Williams or whatever, you know what I mean? So like
Yes.
that shit's important, 2020, 2022, I will be I'm putting it in the universe. I will be
I'm gonna do
Anthony
my
James
best to come
Williams.
see you get hooded. You
Hey,
feel me? I'm gonna see you get your hood.
hey, when this nigga Ed told me he was in a 5-year program, I think I put LMAO as my response.
Yeah, and people be asking me that like, "Oh, you done with your program, right?" And I'm like, "Nah, nigga, I got 3 more years." And the thing is, three is like what is guaranteed. It may take 4 or 5. My plan is not for it to happen, but
Yo,
literally, I'm
you
in a
told me you were
5 year
going to
high
school
school
for
program.
5 years. I like fucking cried. I was like dying laughing. Like, what is wrong with this nigga? Like, who does
Who
that
does
by
that
choice?
shit?
I'm
So
like,
much.
somebody must have put a gun to their head and made them do this shit. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's wild. I'm ridiculous. Like anybody who goes into this, you have to be a little bit crazy,
But
honestly. Like, and I mean that. Like, truly, something is off with us. You
out of
know?
all people, you know, you say you study, you feel me, you do for fun. So I think it fits you. I think it fits you. I think this is your calling.
That was low key shade, but I feel you. I feel you.
it,
You're
was,
right.
it was no shade at all. No shade at all. But yeah, just to transition a little bit to something we was talking about earlier, just talking about pride and whatnot. We just wanted to know, you feel me, like what Pride Month means to you, especially as, something I've been seeing a lot on Twitter, and is how like it's been kind of corporatized in a lot of ways. But yeah, we just wanted to know what pride means to you.
You know, pride pisses me off because pride is not what pride was. If you think about Sylvia Rivera and you think about Marsha P. Johnson, like our trans of color, foremothers, the women who were really doing shit, they at that time were dealing with the shit that I was talking about. They're dealing with cis gay men who were violent as fuck to them. They're dealing with lesbians who were like, you're not real women, right? You know what I mean? Like they were dealing with that shit. And so like pride comes from struggle. Pride comes from a lot of pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Within our community, not even just outside, right? So for me, pride is mad political, but like the way that it works nowadays is it is this it's a commodity, right? And so you have these organizations that have like horrible ass like trans exclusionary policies and like anti-queer ass executives and other shit. And then on Pride, they tweet in a fucking rainbow, and then people are buying it, right? Because they think that makes them an ally. And it's like, no, allyship is actually giving your money directly to Black trans women. Allyship is giving somebody a fucking ride, right? Allyship is like the real ass shit, not you wearing a Pride. Like that might do something in certain spaces. Like you might be making a statement. So I don't want to take away that is in itself an act. But that
that
is
ain't
not
the
really.
yeah, like that's like kind of the Barbie in the floor kind of thing, right?
Exactly. So Pride pisses me off in a lot of ways because like I remember going to my first Pride in San Francisco when I was like 19 or 20, and I just like like that my political development and my political I hadn't done a lot of political study, right? And I didn't know as much about like queer history. And at that point I identified as gay, not queer. And the interesting thing about that is that it was just like people, and granted, as we were talking about with Black joy, like queer joy, right? If you want to, that's not something I talk about a lot, but like being queer and being happy and finding your joy in a place in a world that hates you is important too. However, what I found is like it was just like it wasn't just people having fun and looking cute. It was and just drinking. It was also just like fucking cops at Pride, right? It's fucking corporations at Pride. It's fucking vultures at Pride. Like, you know what I mean? Like all these people. And so it's just hard. It's difficult because like on the one hand, I'm like, oh well, you know what I mean? Like for the young kids, like it's good for them to know that they could be themselves and to see a celebration. But it's like Pride has been so depoliticized for so long,
Mm.
and queer people are so depoliticized because like part of it is survival. We just want to live, but a lot of it is like we don't all have to deal with it. Like me, like I was saying earlier, like when I walk out, if I go in certain neighborhoods, yeah, they might be like faggot, right? But for the most part, that's not something I've dealt with in my life because I have a deep enough voice and I look masculine enough and I present in masculine enough ways, right? Even if niggas might look at me and be like, he a little sweet, right? It's like I'm not sweet enough to like beat my ass, right? For the most part. So and depending on where I am, right? It's all conditional on where you are. But pride is a trip. And so like I like hold my queer and my trans fam like closer in Pride, and I like check in on like I'm always checking in on us like throughout the year, but like I do it a little bit more because sometimes it could actually be triggering for a lot of people. You know what I mean? Pride is not always like just a bunch of love and joy, and sometimes a lot of us just like kind of check out, especially on spaces online like Twitter and shit, because then people be tweeting shit like Black trans lives matter and shit, but then you gonna go and say some transphobic ass shit later, and it's like you know what, like, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's tiring, it's exhausting, and it becomes a cycle of just like, fuck, when can I live?
Did
Like
you
when can
did you see that thread that someone posted right when they were like, all right, like there were like corporations that were posting shit in support of Pride, but they were like, all right, ask this corporation if they like support like surgery for
Yep.
trans folks. Did you see that? I can't remember who the person's
Yep.
names was, right? But like that's like what it
Yep.
is, and I think that we live in a time, especially with social media, where it's so easy to be pandered to, fam. It's so
Yep.
easy for folks to co-opt movements and commodify movements, right? And I can only imagine how that shit functions during Pride, right? Like motherfuckers just putting. I was at a store today and I like seen somebody putting up a rainbow flag. I'm like, nigga, like, what did like? It just makes it to where like these like very like small actions can be like people can capitalize off of them.
Yeah, I even saw SFPD post a tweet like, "Oh, these are our
SF where PD where you feel me, Black
Mario
trans women
was-
is being killed. You feel me all the time. Like,
Right.
what are you motherfuckers doing about that?
But they
Exactly.
have
Like, come on.
a Pride police car. Like, what the fuck is that?
Yo,
supposed
I
to mean?
saw that shit. That made me
Hold on,
so
wait,
fucking
what?
mad.
What?
Yo, Delancey, you gotta see that shit. You gotta see. I might
You
have
be
it
off
on my
Twitter, I'll
phone.
show you
I've been trying to
be.
be off Twitter lately, my nigga, because that shit is just
It's toxic.
yeah, it's a lot.
It's toxic.
But
Yeah.
could you
I
imagine
don't-
something that's designed to oppress folks and not protect not protect and serve.
And think about the revolutionary history of Pride too,
like,
right?
What?
And then the police want to put Pride on.
That's the little and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, right? Or when I sent you the outline, like what does it feel like to be pandered to in the midst of all this? Like something that was supposed to be revolutionary in a sense, right? Motherfuckers co-opted and damn near pandering to you and using it as a means for capital fucking gain or as a means to like sweep under the rug the shit that they're doing.
It's just honestly so aggravating. Like it just makes me Audre Lorde has an essay about anger and the uses of anger. And I think it's short. I think it's really useful for people to read. You could Google it and you could find it like for free online. But it's shitty. It's shitty, Delancey. Like it's shitty. It's just like it really fucking makes me mad because like literally like it's just there's so many people out here dying, right? And we're just talking about the United States, but in Brazil, for example, the amount of trans women that are killed every day, right? The amount of black people that are killed by the police every fucking day, like is even more ridiculous than here in many ways, right? In terms of like the like the numbers, right? Mm-hmm. The absolute number. And it's just sad. It's just so fucking, it's angry. Like that's really the only word I have for you is it pisses me the fuck off. And so I just usually don't even engage in those ways. You know what I mean? I'm just like, let me just not look at this right now. And let me not think about this. For example, while I'm on the podcast, it's important to talk about HRC, the Human Rights Campaign. A lot of people, they're the one that have like the blue and yellow equal sign logo. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think, I used to have a bumper sticker on my car because I was like, yeah, gay marriage and da da da, before like I realized like a lot of the fuck shit around all of this. But that is run by a bunch of white, very conservative cis gay men mostly, and then they'll bring in someone of color or whatever. But they're an organization that has horrible practices, and they are not very supportive of trans women, for example. And so like they're an organization that people will donate to. And one of the dudes from the new Queer Eye, the one with like the long hair and the beard, Jonathan something, he tweeted something about like Happy Pride Month, donate to HRC, and it's like no, fuck that, you know what I mean? So a lot of my friends, like queer leftist friends, are like, no, donate directly to Black trans folks, like donate directly to this organization, right? Donate directly to some of the people, some of these legends who are living, right, and actually are having trouble living, right? Because the thing is, what ends up happening is in trying to be an ally, right, or in trying to be somebody good, you like Google some shit or you ask somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, and they're like, yeah, we'll donate to HRC, or yeah, donate to fucking like, for example, the NAACP. While a local chapter, for example, can be doing some shit, the NAACP can be doing some shit. As a national organization, what has the NAACP done for the three of us niggas? Like, currently, right? I don't want to erase the legacy.
Don't get me started on the NAACP.
But exactly, right? So it's like you wouldn't say as a Black person, donate money to the NAACP. Like, no, the fuck? You know what I mean? You wouldn't say as a Haitian, donate money to the Red Cross. Fuck that shit. You know what I mean? Red Cross stole from fucking Haiti. You know what I mean? So let's not do that. So as you can see, I'm getting angry because it's just like that's what happens. This is what happens all month, and so it's just like, nigga, you know what I mean? The only good thing is not good. The only thing that through which some of us queer folk can exploit, right, is the fact that during Pride Month you might get more speaking engagements or you can get some writing engagements. You know what I mean? So it's like if you gonna exploit me, then fucking write me my check. You know what I mean? And that doesn't make it better, right? But that at least means I can pay my fucking rent. You know?
Right.
Yeah, that should make me mad.
Capitalism, NAACP, whole bunch of fuck shit. But
and then you got the shit like it's a whole nother thing. But then you got like the pink washing of Israel and Palestine, and so then you try to have like Israel branded as this like queer friendly place, right? While Israel is doing horrible ass shit, not only to queer Palestinians, but to Palestinians generally, right? It's like, man, fuck all this shit, like globally. Like it just, it's like so frustrating in so many ways.
Yeah. Shit, fam. You've dropped so much fucking gems on this episode. Like, if you listen to this right now, rewind, start it from the beginning and listen to this shit again because there's hell fucking
This is
gems.
one of the few episodes where I feel like we recorded with, this could be for better or for worse, with our listener in mind. But I hope, I mean, we're 45 episodes in
whatever
right now.
You want to call it.
I hope niggas realize that like Hella Black truly is like unfiltered, unscripted, black
straight
content,
to the point, radical black content,
open discussions, and like. And before we get to this exclusive content, you know, where really you can only hear it if it's Patreon. I want like I feel like I don't know how much you listen to our episodes. I know you support our shit and you listen to some of it, but like there's been a lot of episodes I don't know that you've heard, like where we talk about you a lot, fam, and like I'm super grateful that we finally got to make this happen, and I want all the listeners that get to hear this kind of shit just know that I love and appreciate you. I'm super proud and happy for all the shit that you got going. I'm super grateful for the role that you played in my life. I think that as a cishet man, right, with like the bar being the floor, I get a lot of like kudos for just being decent, and I feel like the work and the labor and the time that you've put into me has helped me go above and beyond the standard for cishet men, and I'm super grateful for you, fam, for real.
Damn, thank you, Delancey. That means a lot. I appreciate y'all both, cause yeah, thank you.
We appreciate you for sure.
Yeah, for real, bro.
And you wanna plug your socials for people who might not be familiar with your work?
Oh yes. So as people may or may not know, I'm Anthony James Williams. I go by the handle on Twitter Anthoknees, ANTHOKNEES. My Instagram is private, so don't be trying to follow me there. People do that all the time. My Twitter's so public. I'm like, get the fuck off my Instagram. Like, get off.
You're not missing shit. It's just pictures of it's memes.
Exactly.
It's memes.
It's memes and Apple.
Like,
it's memes and Apple. Like, y'all not missing shit for real.
Like for real, and I'll post like a selfie that I'll then post on Twitter anyway. So y'all
go get it on Twitter.
Blake followed me. Like, so come on Twitter. Then I got a Patreon that is also Anthoknees. If you search, you will find me. And then my website, if you want to hire me, if you just want to learn more about my work, it's antwilliams.com, ANTWILLIAMS.com, which is wild. I have a website now. I'm like, oh shit.
This nigga bougie for real. What the fuck?
Talented.
You need it as like a PhD student.
Jesus, what the fuck is going on, Anthony?
Yeah, go visit it. It's cute. You'll be like,
go
oh,
visit
okay.
it. Shit.
But that's it.
Yeah,
That's
this is
it.
amazing.
This was
It's
a
the
great
GOAT
episode.
for those that don't know. The greatest of all
If you
time.
drop some money,
Anthoknees,
give
the
money
GOAT.
to Hella Black, and then after you give money to Hella Black, I think almost everything, like my Cash App, my Venmo, most of it is Anthoknees, PayPal.com/Anthoknees. I'm a bad bitch who goes by Anthoknees. You know what I mean? That's it.
So pay this nigga Anthoknees.
Pay
Moral
us
of the
too,
story.
motherfucker.
Yeah, pay us too, for sure. But if you want to really listen to this extended episode, y'all motherfuckers really got a good ass episode for a long ass time.
Is this our longest episode?
This is the longest episode, and it makes sense. Because
Yes, this will happen when real niggas link up. This is what
Yeah.
happens, nigga. This is like the Avengers, nigga.
RNLU, real niggas link up.
This is what
right
happens
now.
when real niggas link up.
Hashtag RNLU. That might be the fucking title of this episode.
That should be the title, honestly.
Real niggas link up. Featuring Anthoknees.
I'm so happy this finally happened. Like, just grateful, my nigga. On a Friday night.
On a Friday,
Woo!
I would rather be doing anything else.
Woo!
But after this, I hope I can get some garlic noodles.
I gave y'all this time. I didn't think you would pick it, but like you
Nigga,
did.
what?
So I appreciate you. You know.
And how many times have we gone like that's like when you said these niggas don't really want me on the podcast, I felt that. I'm like, nigga, we hit this nigga so much. Like I will hit this nigga at like random times of the day, like, hey nigga, what you doing this weekend? But like I think that's like that's literally how like our lives function. Cause like that's how me and Blake record.
It's literally just like, hey bro,
Period,
you free?
fam.
All right, yeah, you trying to record? All right, bet. Share the notes with me. You feel
And
me?
I think
it
like
really
us trying
be
to
like
adapt,
that.
like step outside of that to fucking to accommodate guests
Yeah.
is something like we're practicing, you know, because we have to realize like not everyone, like me and this nigga are super close. We live close to each other. There's like just a bunch of factors that we don't consider for our guests, right? That's why I will hit you at 8:00 on a Tuesday morning, like, hey nigga, what you doing today?
Yeah, I put this shit in my
And you
Google
really have. And
calendar.
the thing is, like, my
This shit was
schedule
worth it.
doesn't allow that, but also, like, I'm somebody who likes to plan shit. Even if it's
that
like,
gives me anxiety.
like 3 hours beforehand, where you're like, can you do this in 3 hours? I'll be like, okay, cool. But if you ask me, oh, I'm outside, like, I come out, I'll be like, nah, I'm in bed. Like, the fuck? Like, go away.
Nah, I respect that though. That's like,
That sounds like boundaries.
yeah, I'm about to say that's like that. Like sounds like a very important boundary.
I think you're teaching us something else that we need to start incorporating in our life is boundaries.
yeah, like B,
Yeah.
when I hit you at 8:00 in the morning, don't feel like you gotta respond to me, my nigga.
Oh no, if I'm up, I'm gonna respond. I
sleeping
just might
down
not
there.
be able to do it. But we did it, so it doesn't even matter. We got it recorded. It's here.
It's here. So if
Do
you want to tap in,
you
to
got more
this-
time, Ant?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, yeah,
All
go
right.
ahead, B.
So if you want to tap into this next part of the episode, tap in with our Patreon, patreon.com/hellblackpod. It is not a donation. You also get access to extended episodes that are extended and exclusive to Patreon. So tap the fuck in with our Patron, our Patron, patreon.com/hellblackpod. Tap in with us for this extended episode.